United States want to maintain relations.
Dr. Kissinger met with, along with President Ford, with President Suharto, and I was present at that meeting. Many have interpreted that meeting as Dr. Kissinger's giving a green light to the subsequent Indonesian invasion of Timor.
East Timor was seeking its independence from Portugal. Kissinger had long been aware of the growing popularity in East Timor of a left-wing independence movement called Fretilin.
The Indonesian military throughout this period was concerned that there not be a separate independent entity developed on one half of one of their islands with strong Chinese communist influence. When Dr. Kissinger came, I think the decision had already been made by the Indonesians that the efforts to negotiate with the Portuguese had not come to fruition, and therefore they needed to take direct military action.
But any military action would involve U.S. weapons, which had been sold solely for self-defense. On December 6, as Ford and Kissinger concluded their visit, preparations were underway for an invasion.
Why, they ask, are the Indonesians invading us? Why, they ask, if the Indonesians believe that Fretilin is communist, do they not send a delegation to Dili to find out? Why, they ask, are the Australians not helping us? When the Japanese invaded, they did help us. Why, they ask, are the Portuguese not helping us? We're still a Portuguese colony. Who, they ask, will pay for the terrible damage to our homes?
One day after this report, Greg Shackleton was killed in East Timor.
What we saw was the massacre of thousands of people as a result of the constant attack of the Indonesian army, from the air, from the sea and land attack.
A lot of people are being killed, I repeat, indiscriminately.
With no cameras to witness the invasion, a radio transmission from the Red Cross is the only live record of the horror of the event.
What I saw was that my own government was very much involved in what was going on in East Timor. We were providing most of the weaponry, helicopters, logistical support, food, uniforms, ammunition, all the expendables that the Indonesians needed to conduct this war. You can be 100% certain that Suharto was explicitly given the green light to do what he did.
The invasion, executions, destruction of the land and resulting famine cost the lives of over 100,000 Timorese. In interviews, Kissinger has long denied that he discussed the invasion in the meeting with Suharto.
We were told at the airport as we left Jakarta that either that day or the next day they intended to take East Timor.
Well, I don't want to take issue with the accuracy of Dr. Kissinger's memoirs, but it was mentioned in the meeting with Suharto. As I recall, Suharto was quite candid, said that after several months of trying to resolve this through negotiation, the Indonesians felt they had to take direct action.
1 week after this interview, the transcript of the meeting with Suharto was released. Suharto: I would like to speak to you, Mr. President, about another problem, Timor. We want your understanding if we deem it necessary to take rapid or drastic action. Ford: we will understand and will not press you on this issue. We understand the problem you have and the intentions you have. Kissinger: you appreciate that the use of U.S.-made arms could create problems. It depends on how we construe it, whether it is in self-defense or is a foreign operation. It is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly. We would be able to influence the reaction in America if whatever happens, happens after we return.
And the U.S. government knew exactly what was happening in those first days of the invasion, December 7th, 8th, 9th. Thousands of Timorese were killed.
Reports of people being herded into school buildings by Indonesian soldiers, with the buildings set on fire, and anyone trying to get out being shot, most of the people being burned alive, people being herded into fields and machine gunned, people being hunted down in the mountains, so anyone out there was in what amounted to a free fire zone.
The Indonesians did not handle it very well from the standpoint of the global community. But again, our leverage was limited, and it was seen in 1975, 76, in the light of the post-Vietnam era, as a very important country to us.
And it happened in a year when Southeast Asia, when Indochina had collapsed. So it wasn't a question of approval, it was a question of not being able to do anything about it.
Knowing full well how many people were killed, they were so concerned at the U.S. State Department that they cabled Henry Kissinger twice, saying that the U.S. Congress would cut off military aid and the bilateral weapon sales to Indonesia, because clearly Indonesia was using these weapons for offensive purposes.
And it would be hard to make a case that Indonesia was threatened by an invasion from East Timor. So while Kissinger's in the air, flying home, the State Department has to issue these statements. It's a matter of law, and they have to say Congress may indeed cut off aid as a result of this, as a legal matter. When he returns from his trip to Indonesia, to the State Department, he comes back to a bureaucratic row at his office. Kissinger is furious.
Kissinger, I want to raise a little bit of hell about the department's conduct in my absence. Take this cable on East Timor. It will leak, and it will go to Congress too, and then we will have hearings on it, and it will come out that Kissinger overruled his pristine bureaucrats and violated the law.
The Arms Export Control Act and the Foreign Assistance Act passed by Congress that limit the ways in which American weaponry can be used, and they confine these uses to external self-defense.
Kissinger, and we can't construe a communist government in the middle of Indonesia as self-defense? Lee, well, Kissinger, then you're saying that arms can't be used for defense. No, they can be used for the defense of Indonesia. Kissinger, I know what the law is, but how can it be in the U.S. national interest for us to kick the Indonesians in the teeth? The meeting concluded with a discussion about how to mislead Congress about arms sales, which did continue after a brief hiatus. In a later meeting, one of Kissinger's aides confirmed that normal relations with Indonesia had resumed. Not very willingly, said Kissinger. Illegally and beautifully. Today, Henry Kissinger is a successful businessman. He runs a firm called Kissinger Associates, in which he uses his diplomatic experience to help businesses around the world. But while Kissinger may profit from past connections, he is also haunted by them. Last year, Kissinger was enjoying a trip to Paris when a French judge served him with a subpoena to answer questions about U.S. involvement in Chile 30 years ago. At issue was Operation Condor, a campaign of murder and torture conducted by the regime of Augusto Pinochet.
The arrest of Augusto Pinochet in London in October of 1998 directly led to pressure on the Clinton administration to declassify hundreds of thousands of documents, secret documents from the CIA, from the State Department and elsewhere, blacked out as they are. These documents are really rather extraordinary. There's a paper trail right up to Kissinger's office that help us revisit this history and understand our efforts to overthrow covertly a democratically elected government in Chile.
I really think Chile was probably the basis and the most corrupt of all the actions because it had nothing to do with national security.
Copper is used all over the world, but the largest known reserve of copper ore is in South America, in the Republic of Chile.
In the 1960s, Chile was fertile soil for American corporate interests, including IT&T, which controlled the copper industry, and Pepsi-Cola. Early in 1970, Pepsi and IT&T were concerned about political developments in Chile. As the country's democratic presidential elections approached,